The tightening grip. By September of 1940, Hitler controlled all of Europe. The Nazis were now free to focus on their next agenda. They began by issuing registration forms to all government employees. Form A was to be filled out by non-Jews and Form B by Jews. 2 months later, all Jewish employees were fired from jobs in post offices, city halls, and schools, including the one where Eli Cardozo taught. The Nazis were not making life easy for Jap either. He had lost his first job, designing ship interiors, because he refused to join the Nazi Architects Organization. But still, he knew that he had a choice of joining or not joining. Eli and his other Jewish friends were not so lucky. They spent their days looking for any odd job they could find and trying to avoid the Dutch Nazi hoodlums. Jap was sitting alone in the cafe late one January afternoon when Eli sat down and threw his new identification card on the table. It looked exactly like the one all Dutch citizens had to carry, with one distinction. On the lower left was stamped a big black J. "So now they're branding us," said Eli. "So much more convenient when they stop us on the street." Jap studied it for a moment. "I have an idea," he said. "You got any bleach?" Nathan and Sam, now 14 and 11, watched the adults set up their work area in the Cardozo's dining room. Jap tested a tiny drop of bleach on his own card. It removed the ink but left a white blotch. "Won't you get in trouble for that?" asked Sam, the 11-year-old. "Shut up, you idiot," said Nathan. "Don't you understand what they're doing?" "Boys, listen to me," said Eli, taking the shoulder of his two sons. "I don't like having to say this, but right now, you've got to be grown up. We don't know what's going to happen to us. Jap wants to help us, but he's taking a risk just being here. Nothing must go beyond this room. Understood?" The boys nodded. Meanwhile, Jap was having no luck with the bleach. "Lend me the cards," he said finally, "and stay home for now." He returned the next day and handed Eli his new card. "What do you think?" he asked, but there was neither a J nor a white blotch. "I think you're a genius," said Eli, "but I don't think I look much like Hans von Kampen." "You do now, and you, my dear, are starting to look just like Louise Dorner," said Jap, handing a new card to Miriam. "So where did you get these?" asked Miriam. "You don't need to know that," said Jap. Let's just say Hans and Louise can get new cards and they'll still be as Christian as they were the day they were born." "But these are their thumbprints and their signatures," said Miriam. "And your photo? Look, the Germans are only looking for the J. This will at least get you your food rations. Just don't act suspicious and you'll be fine." Realizing that all of his Jewish friends' ID cards now needed fixing, Jap asked the non-Jewish people he trusted to lose their ID cards, which he then found and altered. A small operation sprang up in Jap's bedroom as the lost ID cards came in and the fixed cards went out. Carol Blazer and Crean made the new photographs. Within a month, Jap was forging all kinds of papers. Papers were needed for everything: to own a radio or a telephone, to stay out past curfew, for travel, moving, working, or not working. Compared to the ID cards, the permits were and exemption papers were relatively easy to counterfeit. They were usually no more than a mimeogram sheet with a Nazi eagle stamped on them. But a false paper was frequently all that stood between life and death for many Jews. Tension was filling the city as the restriction around the Jewish community grew harsher. On February 20th, the Nazis rounded up 425 Jewish men and sent them to a concentration camp called Mauthausen. It was more than the people of Amsterdam could bear. The following morning, Jap discovered the city at a standstill. The shops and stores he passed were closed, and there wasn't a streetcar or bus in sight. A crowd was gathering in the main square. "Isn't it great?" called Eli, running toward him. "Amsterdam is on strike." The railroad employees walked off their jobs about 3 a.m., protesting the Nazis' roundup yesterday. And then the dock workers followed them. The action caught on right away, and now the whole city is shut down. "What is this?" a Nazi officer shouted from his car at Jap. "A strike," Jap replied. "Strike? Strike? Impossible! There is no such thing as a strike in the Third Reich," shouted the startled German as he drove off. Jaap and Eli laughed. They were amazed themselves. The people of Amsterdam had actually taken back the city from the Third Reich. No Jews, non-Jews were risking their lives for the sake of Jews. The next day, 2 battalions of Nazi stormtroopers drove into town and fired at anyone on the streets. They sent another 300 Jews to Mauthausen and threatened to shoot 500 Jews for each day the strike continued. The strike leaders had no choice but to end it. At the cafe, Jaap's friends debated if the strike did any good. Carol feared even more brutality, and Eli regretted the many deaths. But look what else happened, said Jaap. The people who were ready to fight found each other. Our network could be powerful. There's reason for hope. That is the end.